What is going on, Panther Lair? We are back talking about the Pittsburgh Panthers road loss to the SMU Mustangs this past Tuesday night. Now, I want to talk about why Jaland Lowe struggled in this game. If you're watching this video, then you know he played 32 minutes before fouling out. He finished with 9 points, 5 assists, and 5 turnovers. I think a real big reason why Lowe has not been the player that we saw last year is because he just doesn't have as much help. I think that's the biggest piece. And then he is just asked to carry a ton of the offensive load while teams have also figured out to basically make him work as hard as possible on the defensive end. So I think those things are creeping up. It's one of the reasons why he's struggling, but I do think on like a silver lining note that he is still a solid offensive engine. I just think the pieces around him aren't fitting well, and it just kind of seems like either guys are disengaged or they're just completely gassed from the beginning of the game. So let's take a look at two sequences here, and we'll talk about them. So we're going to dive into this one early in the first half. I think Pitt did a pretty good job here kind of adjusting to these side pick and roll and ball screens, setting them higher than the break, because now you have the guard trying to attack into this space, which is a much better angle than trying to go this way or trying to like just be strung out. And now the rolling big has like a much more, I guess, direct path here and better angle towards the basket. So they did do a decent job of this, at least early in the first half. You'll see this is a switching situation because Boobie Miller gets caught up on the ball screen. And so now we have a screen setting for Guillermo Diaz-Graham. This is going to be an outside ball screen because it's going to be set for Lowe to go this way. But you're going to notice here that this is going to be an empty weak side when he takes this pick and roll. And so I do like how Guillermo sets these screens, and when he flares, doesn't move, but because he starts to turn, that it usually leaves the defender on Lowe in a much trailing position here. You can see Boobie Miller pretty much trailing. Lowe does a decent job attacking into the drop. Probably could take one more dribble, just to be honest, and fully engage this defender and fully commit him to having to sink before passing this back. But Guillermo does a decent job pump faking and then hits this three. So later in the first half, we kind of see a similar situation, except the outside ball screen set on this side. But there's nothing empty on the weak side, right? There's two players over here. So now you're going to see this defender sit here in gap and just kind of like split between Guillermo and Zach Austin. And a lot of this is why Pitt's offense just doesn't work, because Guillermo probably should roll more time so that it's not like a 95% proposition that if you're a smart defense, you know that this guy's going to flare, so you could just kind of like sit on that pass. But they don't really do that. So Guillermo goes, now this defender is just sitting kind of in this gap, and there's maybe a moment here or there where some things could happen. I mean, it's easy, honestly, to just like play this and pause this real quick and talk about, oh, look at all these options. But I mean, these things obviously happen quickly. But if you're a really good processor, if the offense is kind of less robotic and a little bit more fluid, maybe some of these reads happen. I think Lowe, ultimately, you're going to see throws his turner. You just cannot throw this pass. But also, Amstel Delic cannot lift so high that he is basically in direct line with two of these players. So this is kind of a miss on both ends. I think what happens here is, you know, the defender here shows, and then he's going to recover here to Guillermo. So there's a moment when this happens back there that there's probably something else could happen. So as this recovers, maybe a pass into Zach Austin here is possible. If Delic just stays around the break, that pass is extremely accessible. And if Austin just kind of pivots and pins Matt Cross here in, then this is probably just a really good look for a guy that, like, you would think is going to shoot the ball well. But that's not what happens. And then it ends up that a turnover, and then Lowe just commits a foul here coming out of transition. So, I mean, these are the types of things that really has been hurting Pitt's offense. Is you could put this on Lowe and say you have to make a better pass there, you have to make a better read. That's like 100% correct. But also, Pitt's offense is extremely predictable. And then when you start playing lineups with guys that like team, you know, you're not playing games in, you know, guys are going to do different things, and it's a little bit different in practice. And I still go back to, you know, Delic, Brandon Cummings, those guys played a lot of minutes when Dunn went out the first time, and then he, you know, came back, and then they pretty much never played. Now I understand those guys don't defend really well. I mean, I think that's pretty obvious, but now you're playing with lineups where you don't have a lot of guys on the floor at the same time in these crucial games, and maybe if they play together a little bit more, Delic stays there right around the break, doesn't lift into basically a pass that has to now go through two guys. So the offense looks bad for a couple different reasons, but I figured, hey, you know, there's not a lot to highlight here in a positive way, so let's kind of break some of this down, maybe talk about, you know, how things could get better. I think they're just going to have to, because guys are going to have to start playing a little bit more together. So maybe we'll see if some of these miscues work themselves out.